In this tutorial we are going to talk about the JSON and how to use it properly with Ajax and PHP. So stay with me. Hey, what's up source hackers? Sinead here from CodePassiveIncome.com, the place where I help others to become a web developer much easier and faster than they will do it on their own. So if that is something that interests you, make sure that you subscribe. So now before we actually start connecting Ajax and JSON and PHP and really see how it all works together, first I want to show you what actually JSON is and how we can write one, and then after how we are going to use it with Ajax and then later with PHP together. So basically JSON stands for JavaScript object notation, which means that we are able to create objects and then later we are going to access those objects and use it for different data manipulation. So in order to create one object, basically we can say something like name equal and then whatever, or maybe even better, we can say person equal, and that means that this person will now be this object, and later we can say, for example, if we have name is, let's say, Sinead, and then last name, let's say, is B. Now later we can say something like person.name. That means that this is basically at the moment just JavaScript, but it means that in the person variable we are storing the object, and this object we can access by saying variable dot the key, which we treat this as a key, and this is the value. Now in the JSON all we need to do is we will remove all the variables and then we will delete this part, and as you can see now this is valid. Now it says, now it doesn't show any error and it clearly says now that this is object. Now what we can do inside the objects is we are able to store different arrays and create another object. So let's say we have one, let's say, array persons. So that means I'll create again a new object, and now, or maybe even better, we can say like this, okay, which means that persons is array, and let's say array of objects, which each object will be a new identity. So let's say in this one we are going to say name, Sinead, and then we can say last name, it can be B, and then let's say favorite colors, okay, and now this can be, let's say, indexed array where we will say, for example, blue and green. It's not important. So now this persons is an array of objects where each object is basically an identity for each person. So if we want to have more people, we can say, I will just duplicate this, say comma, and that's it. Now we have another person, so we can change this. So we can say Johnny, let's say A, favorite colors, white and black, for example. And now of course we can duplicate this and use as many of those as we want. So at the moment, just imagine that we have created a new file, data.json, and inside this file we have stored some data that is written in the JSON, which is basically an object of the data. And yeah, you can see what we have here, persons, and then inside each person there are identities that are again objects. So I know it feels a little bit confusing, but this is pretty much all you need to understand. We object start like this, and then inside we have key value pairs, and then value can be anything you want. So for that reason I have made a couple of different examples, because for example here we have indexed array, here we have just a value, etc, etc. Now let's move over and see how we can really access this data from the file in our browser. So let's say that I have the basic HTML document. Okay, let's say maybe just here Ajax and JSON. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to include the jQuery library. Okay, so I will include it here at the bottom. So just a moment. Okay, now I will say that we are going to have a script, and then we will just wait for a document load. So I will say when document is ready, we are going to execute this function. And then here inside this function, what I want to do is I will use something that we say get JSON, and then here we can specify the URL from which we are going to get the JSON data. So in our case it's data.json, and then once we get the data, this function will execute its callback function, and then let's say everything will be in the variable R. So what we can do is maybe we can print to the console R, and let's see. So now when I go here, open the console, refresh the page, now you can see that we have got from the network, you can see that we made request to the data.json, and this is what is returned. Okay, and this is in the console. So now in the console you can see now that we have the persons, which is array with 2 elements, and in our case those are the objects. And now each object which I say is people identity, we have, so in this one we have name, last name and favorite colors, and the same thing for the second person. So now what we can do is let's see how we can print all of this to the body so that we get something. So let's say we can use, or maybe we can first say if our persons dot length, which means if there is some data. So is it persons? Yeah. What we can do is we can use one for loop that will go through this array. So we can say for, let's say starting from 0, I less than persons dot length I plus plus, and then what we can do, we can say to the body, or maybe we can create some place. So let's say, okay, and I will say here ID persons. Okay, can say here persons dot append. Okay, and what you are going to insert is, let's say first, or maybe you can say like this, name, and then we can have maybe just favorite colors. Okay, maybe we can put this in the new line. Okay, so here what we can say is r dot persons I, and then dot name, and let's say this is for now so you can really understand this. Let's just see what will happen now. Okay, when we refresh, this is what we get. And now of course we should add maybe break. Okay, and that's it. So now basically we have got all the data from our data.json file directly in the browser without going directly to the file, which is important. That means that with the Ajax we can make a request to the server, and if it's, let's say, JSON file, we can get the data directly, or later in the tutorial when I show you how to work with the PHP, Ajax and JSON, you'll see that we are able to actually make through Ajax the request to the server and then get all the data from there. So let's go ahead, and now let's, after printing the name, let's also print the last name. So we can say maybe last name, and then it's going to be the same. So we'll say persons dot dot last name, and then we'll add the break again. Okay, and let's see now. Boom, now we have got also the last name, which is good. Okay, and now the next thing is, let's see how we can get also the favorite colors for this person. So what we can do is, maybe we can say here favorite colors. Okay, and then yeah, that's fine. And then we will need to have another loop that will go for this person through all favorite colors. So we can say maybe for lower than persons, but now this time from I dot favorite colors dot length, if I'm not wrong. So let's see. Yes, favorite colors. Okay, II plus plus. And now as you can see, we are using II as a different counter just to make sure that we are not going through the same one. And here, of course, I have made a mistake. So we will need to be like this. And then what we can do is we can say, okay, we will append to our persons. Okay, we will append, and now it's going to be like this. So I'll just grab it. Okay, and it will be this one. So let's see. Fresh. Okay, now it says name, last name B, favorite colors blue, green, name, and now of course we will need to make some distinction here. So now there are different ways how we can do this, but let's say we will make it each time to make like space. Okay, and then once we finish, we can each time append, let's say, 2 new breaks. Okay, so let's see now, and boom, and now it works really nice. Now we have name, last name, favorite colors, blue and green, which is okay. And now what we can do is we can add as many data as we want here. That data will be easily accessible through the Ajax, and then we are able to easily use. So I hope so that this is very clean and easy way for you to understand. But now, since we have this way of doing it, let's also see how we can do the same thing with the Ajax. Okay, so now what I can say here is Ajax, and then inside the Ajax we are going to have an object like configuration. So we can say URL is data.json, and then we can say method is get data type that will be returned from the server is JSON, and then we can say that on success we will have one function. And then as you can see, everything is exactly the same. So for that reason we can just copy this and paste here. Okay, and maybe let's just remove this. Okay, and let's see how it works. When I refresh, you can see now that pretty much there isn't any change, but the change is in the code. So now you can see that I'm directly using Ajax, and you can really see how it works. Okay, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Now let's see how we can also to this code plug in the PHP and how to make an Ajax call to the PHP. Let PHP create some JSON file on the fly and then return it to the server and do something with that. So let's see. So let's say here I will leave, maybe I can just comment this so you can see just the difference. Okay, and then I'm just going to grab this, paste here. Okay, so I will modify, let's say my method will be post, data type will stay the same, and let's say this part will stay the same. Now what is the difference? The difference is that instead of the data.json I will say index.php, and now inside our index.php file I'm going to say here that there will be some PHP code, and maybe we can add here data. Let's say we'll say create JSON. That's what we are expecting inside the PHP, and that's how we are going to know that Ajax is making a call. So we can say here if isIt post create JSON, then in that case we will need to create the data and return to the jQuery, to the Ajax, doing the same way. So now if we analyze this data, we can see now that we have one persons. So what we can say here is we will have one, maybe we can say just data, so it's an array. So how do we know that it is an array? Well, basically you can see that this is object, and basically when you convert associative array from PHP to the JSON, it will become an object. So that's important thing to remember. So for that reason I'm creating an array, and since it needs to be associative array in order to create this object, in that case we will need to have one key value. So I will say persons, and then we will have an array again here. Okay, but now since it can be confusing for you if you see it like this, so I will just make a distinction, and I will say that indexed arrays I'll write like this, and then those that will be converted to the objects we will write like this, just so that it's easier for you to understand. And now if we check this persons is indexed array, we did that. Now we need to create an object which is associative array again. So how we are going to do this? Well, we can easily say here that we are going to have an array and the second array, which is exactly what we have. We have two persons, this one array and this one array. Okay, and now inside this one we will have what? We have the name, okay, which is Sinead, and then we have last name, which is B, sorry, and then we also have favorite colors. Okay, and now let's see, we can see now that favorite colors are indexed array, so for that reason I will just grab it. Okay, maybe let me just do it here, and that's it. Now the same thing needs to happen for this one. So because of that, okay, I will just copy paste this here. Okay, and then I will just quickly change this. Okay, cool, and that's it. Okay, so now this is how it looks like when we write and try to create the JSON inside the PHP and are going to return it to the Ajax. And so this looks good, but the last thing is we need to convert this array to the JSON, and basically we are going to do it with the function that is JSON encode, and to that function we need to give our array, and that's it. And now we can just say exit JSON, which means we are going to return it back. So let's see. Now I will refresh, and boom, it looks like nothing happens at all. But let's see here, you can see now that inside of the data.json, now we have created the post request to the PHP, and this is what PHP has returned. So when you go to the preview, you can see that again we have persons. Each person is like object, and each object have its own name, last name, favorite colors. And if you want to make a distinction, just to make sure this is from PHP, I'll just add the number 2, and when we refresh, you can see it's here. So guys, to wrap this out, pretty much it's very easy to understand. You just need maybe to practice a little bit, but you just need to remember how to create the JSON file, and then how to from Ajax write it. You can use Ajax like this, or you can use $.getJSON function. It's pretty much the same thing. And inside the PHP, you need to remember how you are going to create it. So maybe sometimes you don't have the data inside the file data.json, and basically you have this inside the database, as we do in many of my tutorials. So for that reason, this is how we are going to create one, and this is how we are going to encode it to the JSON, and then this is how we are going to return it to the Ajax. And pretty much that's it. So guys, I hope that you have understand this tutorial. If you do, if you enjoyed, please like it and share it to your friends. And like always, if you have any questions or anything, make sure that you ask in the comments below, and I will try to answer all of them. Take care.